The impact of inflation now has another number. According to a new study by NerdWallet, household spending could increase by more than $11,000 this year. In this Watching Your Wallet, consumer investigator Rachel DePompa explains ways that you can fight back against rising costs in this Watching Your Wallet.
Got an extra $11,500 lying around? That's what you'll need to keep up with those prices this year. And that's a lot more than you probably budgeted for because of high prices at the grocery store, the pump, and even your home.
We found that in order to purchase the same groceries that you bought in 2020, you're going to be spending about $100 more each month on average. For utility bills, it's about $70 more each month. So this really adds up. And if you're on a tight budget to begin with, things can get really dicey.
Elizabeth Renter is a data analyst with NerdWallet. The company looked at how much spending could rise this year compared to last. She says something as simple as switching from name brand to generic at the grocery store could help keep your spending in check. She says you also need to prepare for high interest rates, meaning if you were going to buy a car, maybe you put that purchase off for another year.
If you can funnel more money into an emergency fund or your savings, do, because things might not get better for a little while and it'll feel good to have that extra cushion.
If you can't put more money into an emergency savings account and these rising prices are putting you over the edge, don't be afraid to reach out for help. Go to 211.org or dial 211 to get put in touch with community resources in your area. With this Watching Your Wallet, I'm Rachel DePompa.
As inflation continues to rise, the Federal Reserve will be holding a meeting tomorrow to plan to announce their decision on interest rates. Travel demand was sky high this summer, leading to flight cancellations, delays, and service issues around the world. A combination of increased demand, staffing shortages, and severe weather led to more than 50,000 flight cancellations in this country alone, and around 500,000 delays between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Almost 1 in 4 U.S. flights were late.
I think the travel surge is here to stay for quite some time because nothing motivates people like having something taken away they took for granted.
America's most visited cities are benefiting from the boom, and overseas, officials say occupancy spiked as high as 80% this summer. If you're planning to fly this fall and into the holidays, officials predict prices that have risen because of inflation and increased demand won't come down anytime soon, especially when China starts allowing its citizens to once again travel internationally, who used to be the world's top tourism spenders. Stay with us. Hutch returns with an update on your Tuesday evening weather planner.